Her name was Heather Diane Turner. The beauty she carried inside was as real as the beauty she showed the world. January 1998 came cold and quiet, and in that month, at just 16 years old, her life was stolen. 2 decades have passed, and the case remains open but frozen. There are questions that still have no answers, grief that still has no end, and a silence that still waits to be broken. By someone who knows, by someone who remembers, by someone who loved her. Heather grew up in Adelaide's western suburbs. Her early years spent at Largs Bay Primary School before she moved on to Taperoo High School. Those who walked beside her remember someone bright and full of laughter, a girl with endless energy and a warmth that drew people in, the kind of teenager who always found the good in others, even when it wasn't easy to see. Her best friend, Callie Edmonds, met her in primary school, and from that first moment, they were never really apart. By the time high school came around, they shared the same classrooms, the same secrets, the same ordinary days turned into something more because they faced them together. Even when the final bell rang, their bond didn't fade. It followed them home. During her mid-teen years, Heather went through a stretch of uncertainty. At 15, she left home for a while and started spending time with older individuals she had come to know. Although she eventually made things right with her parents and came back, investigators later suggested this was a time when Heather may have been more exposed to risk. Even so, those who knew her best insisted she was never careless or unkind, just a young girl finding her way through the difficult years of growing up. By January 1998, Heather had resumed a more settled life. She was back in contact with her family, spending time with friends, and working part-time at a supermarket. The school holidays had arrived, and on Friday the 16th of January 1998, Heather planned to meet Callie Edmonds for a day at Semaphore Beach. The sun was out and the air was warm when the two friends came together at Semaphore Square, where Callie was keeping an eye on her younger brothers and sisters at the nearby waterslide. Hours passed as they talked and laughed, sharing stories and making plans to see each other again when night fell. Around 1 o'clock in the afternoon, Heather told Callie she had to head back to her parents' place on Gulf Court in Largs Bay. Her plan was to walk home, meet up with another friend, and then return to Callie's house later that night. Callie later remembered hugging her goodbye and saying, "See you tonight." There was a feeling she couldn't quite name at the time, something unsettled beneath the surface, but nothing seemed truly wrong. Heather smiled and assured her friend she would be fine. Callie offered to go with her, but Heather said no, it was just a short walk, she wouldn't be long. Heather, however, never arrived home. When Callie phoned Heather's house later that day to arrange their evening plans, Heather's mother told her that Heather had not returned. Concern quickly grew. Heather had left hours earlier and had not made contact. Friends and family began making phone calls and retracing her expected route home from Semaphore, but no one had seen her. In the days that followed, several unconfirmed sightings of Heather were reported, but none could be conclusively verified. As time passed, fear replaced hope. Callie later said she had a strong sense that something was terribly wrong, even telling friends that she believed Heather was dead. Searches were carried out and early leads were followed, but Heather stayed missing. Then, on Saturday the 31st of January 1998, 15 days since anyone had laid eyes on her, police came upon something terrible. A uniformed officer on patrol spotted the body of a young woman, partly hidden in the water among mangrove trees at Port Gawler, north of Adelaide. She had been badly hurt, and the days had done their damage. Decomposition made it impossible to say who she was right away. Police turned to the public for help, sharing photos of the unique jewelry found on the victim. When Callie Edmonds saw the news report, she knew right away. The ring and necklace were ones Heather never took off. Her worst fear became real. Later, dental records would officially confirm what Callie already understood in her heart. The body belonged to Heather Turner. Heather had been brutally murdered. The discovery devastated her family and friends. She was just 16 years old. The questions surrounding her death were immediate and overwhelming. Where had she been during the 2 weeks she was missing? Who was responsible, and why had she been killed? Police investigators later disclosed that Heather never made it straight home after leaving Semaphore Beach that day. Through their work, detectives eventually learned that on Sunday the 18th of January, Heather had been present at a gathering taking place at a rented house on Ashwin Road in Davoren Park. The house, which has since been demolished, was occupied by people known to police, described as petty criminals and low-level drug users. Between 4 and 8 people were present at the property during the relevant period. Investigators believe Heather arrived around midday on the 18th of January and remained there into the early hours of the following morning. Despite her age, she was associating with people in their 20s, something police would later describe as placing her in a vulnerable position. In the early hours of Monday the 19th of January, Heather walked out of the Ashwin Road house on her own 2 feet, climbing into a Mitsubishi Magna sedan with a male acquaintance. Investigators believe she thought she was heading home to Largs Bay, back to her family. But she never made it. No one would see her alive after that night. The exact place where Heather lost her life has never been determined, but investigators believe she was killed sometime after leaving that house in Davoren Park. The injuries she suffered spoke to a brutal attack, though police have never made public the precise cause of death. What they have said is that her body was likely kept somewhere else for days before being moved to Port Gawler and left in the creek, hidden among the mangroves where she was finally found. Heather was found fully clothed in the same outfit she had been wearing when she left Semaphore Beach: a white crocheted beret, floral top, jeans, and black lace-up boots. However, one significant item was missing: her distinctive black shoulder bag featuring Tweety Bird on the flap. The bag has never been recovered and remains a key unanswered detail in the case. During the investigation, police took at least 1 vehicle for forensic examination, but nothing turned up that could move the case forward. Over the years that followed Heather's death, nearly 100 statements were gathered from those who might have known something. Still, no charges were ever filed. At one point, a suspect was brought in and questioned, but authorities later admitted there simply wasn't enough evidence to take it any further. Through the early years of the new millennium, the investigation slowly went quiet, though it was never officially shut down. Detectives have always held tight to the belief that the people Heather knew in Davoren Park, the ones she was with in those final days, carry pieces of the truth. Police are convinced that after she died, there were conversations, words exchanged behind closed doors, about where her body was kept, how it was moved, and when it was finally left in the water. Somewhere, someone still remembers. In 2009, South Australian police put forward a reward of $200,000 for information that would lead to a conviction in Heather Turner's murder. At that time, major crime investigators said they believed they were just one crucial piece of evidence away from solving it. But even with fresh attention on the case, nothing moved forward. Then in 2014, the reward was raised significantly to $1 million, a sign of just how serious the crime was and how strongly police felt that someone out there had stayed silent for far too long. The increased money brought in new tips and helped paint a clearer picture of Heather's final hours, but it still wasn't enough to name the person who took her life. Public appeals intensified in the years that followed. Callie Edmonds repeatedly spoke out, sharing her memories of Heather and urging those with knowledge to come forward. She described Heather as a happy, trusting, and full-of-life person, someone who did not deserve the fate she suffered. Callie emphasized that even small pieces of information could help bring answers to Heather's family. In February 2017, 19 years after Heather was killed, police took another look at the case file from the beginning. Detective Brevet Sergeant Sean Osborne made a public appeal, speaking directly to those who had been inside the Ashwin Road house that weekend. He told them plainly that they held the keys to solving the crime. He understood there might be fear holding them back, reasons they had not come forward before. But he wanted them to know there were ways to protect them, tools available to make speaking to police feel less like a risk and more like a chance to finally do right by Heather. Police also released new information, sharing their belief that Heather's body had been kept on land for a period of time before it was placed in the creek, a detail that spoke to both haste and coldness in how she was left behind. The spot chosen, Port Gawler, was known as a place where people dumped cars and other things they wanted to disappear, suggesting the person responsible knew the area and made a deliberate decision. In 2018, authorities for the first time publicly named the Ashwin Road house where Heather had spent her final known hours. They hoped that saying the address out loud might stir something in someone's memory, might push a witness to finally speak. Through it all, they held firm to what they believed. Heather walked out of that house on her own, alive and willing, and somewhere after that, in a place still unknown, her life was taken from her. ### a family's unending grief. By 2026, more than 28 years after Heather's death, her family continued to live with unresolved grief. Relatives described the enduring pain of not knowing who killed Heather or why. They announced they were considering pushing for a coronial inquest, hoping it might uncover new information or compel witnesses to speak. As of June 2025, the $1 million reward remains on offer. South Australian police continue to urge anyone with information, no matter how minor it may seem, to contact Crime Stoppers anonymously. Heather Turner's murder is more than just a cold case buried in police files. It is the story of a life cut short, of a future that never came, of a family still waiting in a room that never stops feeling empty. For those who held her close, the years have not softened the ache or quieted the need to know what really happened. Decades have slipped away, but hope has not. Somewhere, there is someone who carries a piece of the truth. Maybe a name, maybe a memory, maybe something they have kept buried as long as Heather has been gone. One voice, one act of courage, could be the thing that finally brings her justice. Until that day comes, her story will not fade. It will be told not as a statistic, not as just another unsolved name on a list, but as what it truly is. The life of a girl with a warm heart and a bright smile, a girl who deserved to grow up, to grow old, to be remembered not only for how she died but for who she was. Her memory still asks for the truth. And it will keep asking until someone finally answers.